everyone, welcome back to a new day of Vegan November. And so for breakfast yesterday I made a potato, onion, tomato and spinach scramble. I first cut up one medium sized potato into cubes and then I added that to a pan with a small drizzle of olive oil and I cooked them off until they were almost crispy on the outside. I then chopped up one white onion and one large tomato and I next added the onion to the pan. I cooked that off until soft before then adding in the tomato and 1 cup of frozen spinach, but you could use fresh spinach. I seasoned it with black pepper, left it to cook for a few more minutes for the spinach to wilt down, and then I served it up into a bowl with some of my homemade ketchup on top. This is a great weekend kind of breakfast or even a brunch. It keeps you full for so long, and you could even add mushrooms to this, have it with some baked beans or some vegan sausages for a full kind of cooked breakfast. For a mid-morning snack I grabbed a packet of these Eat Real Quinoa sour cream and chive chips. You know how much I love these chips. They also do lentil ones and hummus chips too in all sorts of flavours. I've mentioned them in videos before and I think I've now eaten my way through most of the range. But since these were the sour cream flavour, I thought that these would be really great to eat with some leftover cashew sour cream that I still had in the fridge, and I just love having these chips with dip anyway because their shapes are perfect for scooping. They're super crunchy, the ingredients are all good and the flavour is amazing. Really creamy but with a hint of onion, garlic and chive. For lunch I made some mushroom pate with pumpkin seed oatcakes. I first added 4 halved shallots to a pan with a splash of hot water and I fried those off until they were soft. I then roughly chopped up 200 grams of mushrooms and I added those to the pan and let them cook down. I then added in 1/3 of a cup of chopped walnuts and allowed those to lightly toast, and then I added in 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. I seasoned it with salt and black pepper and then I also threw in a small handful of fresh thyme. I gave that a good stir and then I transferred it over to my food processor, blended it up until it was pretty much smooth. I then left it to cool, transferred it into a dish, then popped it in the fridge to chill for a while, and then I served that with some of my pumpkin seed oatcakes. I'll link to the recipe for these down below. A really quick and easy lunch. This was just enough for one, but you could also double the recipe for 2 portions if you wanted. And it's also really great to have on toast or in sandwiches. It's super versatile. I love to have it on superfood bread, on these pumpkin seed oatcakes or on quinoa crackers. It tastes amazing, the texture of it is perfect and it works really great as a light lunch or even as just a snack. This was actually an accidental recipe I came up with whilst making a pasta sauce. As I say, the texture of it is exactly like pate and I've been making it as a spread like this ever since. For an afternoon snack I made some apple pie cookies. I first preheated my oven to 180 degrees Celsius, and for this I just added 2 cups of oats, half a cup of oat flour, 5 tablespoons of applesauce, 2 tablespoons of almond butter, 3 tablespoons of maple syrup, 1 chia egg and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon to a mixing bowl, and I gave that a really good stir until it began to stick together. I then took around 2 tablespoons of the mix and formed cookie shapes from each. I lined those out on a lined baking tray and this recipe makes 8 cookies altogether. I then placed those in the oven to bake for 25 to 30 minutes until they go slightly golden. I then took them out, left them to cool, and I had one of those to snack on. I love any form of oat cookie and it's so fun coming up with different flavours for them. These are really sweet because of the applesauce and the maple syrup. There's the sweet but slightly spiciness from the cinnamon, but the combination of the oats and the almond butter gives them that kind of apple pie crust texture and taste. They're a little bit crispy on the outside but soft in the middle. They're amazing. For dinner I made a cheese, onion and tomato pasta bake. I first cooked up 2 cups of whole wheat penne in a pan of boiling salt water, and in the meantime, I diced up 1 white onion and sliced up 1 large tomato. I then turned my oven on to 180 degrees Celsius, and once the pasta had cooked, I rinsed and drained it. I placed the onions in the pan with 1 tablespoon of olive oil and cooked them down. I then added in a batch of my cheese sauce. Again, the recipe for this is down below, and I gave that a really good stir. I then added the pasta back in, gave it another really good mix together before transferring a third of it into a baking dish. I then layered over half the tomato slices, added another layer of the cheese and onion pasta, then the other half of the tomato slices, then I topped it with the remaining pasta. I also sprinkled over 3 tablespoons of onion flakes, which add so much flavour but also give that kind of breadcrumb crunch to it, and I seasoned it with some black pepper. I placed that in the oven for 15 minutes. It really doesn't need long to cook because the pasta is already warm, and so once it was out of the oven, I served it up between 2 bowls, though this could actually serve 4 people, and I topped it with some fresh basil leaves. Again, this is another really comforting wintry dinner, but it's also super quick to make, really easy, and it's a cheap weeknight meal. I think onions added to it just give it so much more flavour and texture, and the tomatoes give it a little sweetness, and you could also use hemp seeds as the topping if you didn't want to use breadcrumbs. That also works really well too. For dessert, I made some cacao hazelnut butter stuffed dates. I just took 4 dates which I stuffed with a little hazelnut butter, and then I just took a small amount of raw cacao powder and I sprinkled that over the top. Such a quick and easy delicious treat, and the combination tastes like some amazing chewy hazelnut chocolate caramel. And that is it for another day on my plate for Vegan November. I really hope you enjoyed this video. The recipes will be listed in the description box below for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again on Wednesday for the next one. Bye!